Sam Harris and Lex Fridman discuss the role of empathy and reason in decision-making and leadership, with a focus on controversial topics such as Donald Trump, the pandemic, vaccines, and lab leaks. Harris argues that while empathy can be helpful in certain situations, it can also be a hindrance when it comes to making big decisions about mitigating human suffering and protecting values. He believes that reason is a better tool for these types of decisions. However, he also acknowledges that empathy can be useful in certain contexts, such as when discussing ideas with people who hold different perspectives. The conversation also highlights the dangers of promoting individuals who lack empathy, reason, and honesty to positions of power, using Trump as an example. The discussion also touches on the importance of understanding different perspectives and experiences, while also acknowledging the reality of the situation and the need for critical thinking and analysis. Harris emphasizes the importance of calling a spade when talking about how things actually work and what is likely to happen, but also recognizing that people have different life experiences and showing empathy and compassion towards them. The negative effects of social media, particularly Twitter, on mental health and the spread of misinformation are also discussed. Harris reflects on his own experience with Twitter and how it has affected his life, as well as Elon Musk's use of the platform. The conversation also touches on the issue of clips being taken out of context and used for malicious purposes, such as the Hunter Biden scandal. Harris emphasizes the importance of understanding context and giving people the benefit of the doubt, even those who may be considered terrible people. The subjects of depression, the pandemic, misinformation, and conspiracy theories are also discussed. Harris notes that depression is a multifactorial problem and suggests that meditation and lifestyle changes can help alleviate it. The pandemic is a complicated problem, and Harris expresses concern about our ability to respond to a truly scary pathogen in the future. The conversation then shifts to the potential dangers of AI and deepfakes in creating a misinformation apocalypse. Harris argues that people need to function on the basis of what they assume is true, rather than blindly trusting authority. The importance of critical thinking and discernment in a world where misinformation is becoming increasingly prevalent is emphasized. The concept of expertise is also discussed, with Harris recognizing the value of expertise and the potential dangers of misinformation and conspiracy thinking. The two continue talking about various topics including navigating information ecosystems in the current era of social media and the pandemic. Harris suggests that humility and empathy are important in resisting dogmatism and binary thinking, and becoming a trusted communicator of expertise. The conversation then shifts to the topic of COVID-19 and the vaccine, with Harris acknowledging that there was skepticism about the safety and efficacy of the vaccine. The conversation also touches on how to navigate the pressure of commenting on the behavior of friends or acquaintances who have a public platform and are influencing a lot of people. Harris mentions how he criticized Fridman in public about his interview with Kanye West, but had reached out to him in private first. The conversation then shifts to the topic of how artists are treated, with Harris suggesting that Kanye's delusional egocentrism is the most offensive thing about him. Overall, Harris believes that the conversation with Kanye should not have been aired publicly, and that there are clear boundaries that need to be kept in mind when dealing with someone who may be mentally ill or simply an asshole. They talk about intermittent fasting and its benefits for health, cognition, and longevity. They also discuss the issue of anti-Semitism and how it is a unique kind of hatred that is knit together with conspiracy theories that never seem to die out. Harris shares his personal experience with anti-Semitism and expresses concern about an immensely influential person in a community who already has a checkered history with respect to their own beliefs about the Jews and the conspiracies. The conversation also touches on the dangers of confabulation and conspiracy theories, particularly in relation to the difficulty of tracking down misinformation and conspiracy theories in the age of social media. Harris notes that people like Alex Jones tend to pack as much information as possible into their speech patterns, making it difficult to refute each point. He also expresses concern about the spread of misinformation on social media, particularly in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic. The political climate and the role of entertainment in politics are also brought up. Harris argues that the political system has become a game where getting a big laugh during a debate is more important than being informed about the issues. He also talks about his relationship with Joe Rogan and how they have different approaches to their podcasts. While Rogan is an entertainer first and foremost, Harris sees himself as a voice of reason. Other various topics were also discussed, including COVID-19, vaccine hesitancy, conspiracy theories, and the responsibility of public figures when messaging to a large audience. Harris believes that vaccine hesitancy has led to unnecessary deaths in the US and suggests that communicating with humility about the uncertainty of things could increase the vaccination rate. He also believes that it is rational and sometimes effective to signal impatience with certain bad ideas and conspiracy theories. Harris expresses concern about audience capture, where content creators become captured by an audience that only wants to hear a certain perspective. He specifically mentions Bret Weinstein and his focus on COVID in his podcast, which Harris believes is due to audience capture. The conversation emphasizes the importance of critical thinking and the dangers of confabulation and conspiracy theories. Additionally, the discussion highlights the importance of being aware of audience capture and the need to remain open to changing views based on new information. Harris also discusses the corrupting influence of Trump on the public communication of science and the depredations of wokeness. He believes that we need a public health regime where we can trust what confident people are saying to us about what medicines are safe to take. Sam Harris discusses his relationship with Bret Weinstein and how they differ on the issue of COVID-19. He believes public figures like Weinstein, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk have a responsibility not to endanger people with their messaging. The conversation then shifts to the lab leak hypothesis and its significance in the COVID-19 pandemic. Harris admits he was never skeptical of the hypothesis and initially believed the origin story of the virus did not matter. He cautions against using Weinstein's early support of the lab leak hypothesis to suggest he was right about other controversial topics such as ivermectin and mRNA vaccines. The podcast continues into how intermittent fasting improves health, cognition, and longevity. They also discuss the potential dangers of AI, including the risk of creating autonomous superintelligence that could become a threat to humanity. Harris believes that we need to take the prospect of creating superintelligence seriously and find a way to permanently tether it to our value system. They also touch on the topic of pharmaceutical companies and the distrust that many people have towards them. The conversation then shifts to Elon Musk and his behavior on Twitter, which Harris criticizes as very Trumpian. They also discuss the potential dangers of misinformation and deepfakes in the age of technology, and the need for a more rigorous system to identify experts. Finally, they briefly touch on the potential future of human society beyond Earth, and the possibility of a pendulum swing back to real-world interactions rather than digital ones. They move on to personal well-being, free will, and the concept of possibility. Harris suggests that meditation is key to achieving personal well-being and being present in the moment. He also argues that mindfulness and meditation can help us recognize that thoughts have no substance, and that the sense of being a subject in the middle of experience is an illusion. Harris and Friedman also discuss the illusion of free will and the relationship between possibility and actuality. They explore the idea that possibility is a structure that exists in our imagination, but it is not necessarily real. Sam Harris and Lex Friedman discuss various topics in this podcast, including intermittent fasting, AI, and UFOs. They also touch on Elon Musk's contributions to space exploration and Bret Weinstein's commitment to intellectual honesty. Harris expresses his admiration for Weinstein's willingness to engage in difficult conversations and his skepticism about the existence of UFOs. The conversation also covers Trump's presidency, the pandemic, Twitter's toxic platform, and Kanye West's presidential campaign. Harris argues that corruption can have devastating consequences, citing the war in the Middle East as an example. He also notes that individuals solely focused on wealth, power, and fame are not concerned with the risks posed by environmental, pandemic, or nuclear proliferation. The conversation touches on the military-industrial complex and the failures of nation-building in Afghanistan and Iraq. Harris concludes that he voted for Biden despite his flaws because he was a better option than Trump, who refused to commit to a peaceful transfer of power. Harris expresses concern about the potential for bias and ideological influence in social media companies' decision-making process. He reflects on his own experience of using Twitter and the negative impact it had on his attention and sense of self. Harris concludes that social media is too fragmenting of time and attention, and being too online is a real phenomenon that can have negative consequences for our mental health and well-being. Twitter can turn ordinary people into sociopaths, as false information about dishonesty and unethical behavior is delivered into their brains. Anonymity on Twitter can lead to trolling and altercations. However, there are ways to use Twitter without it having a negative effect, such as using it as a one-way channel of communication for marketing purposes. Check out the full podcast by clicking the link in the description below. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for listening to this podcast summary episode of the Pod Slice.